Welcome to this week's edition of Inter-University Debate, which is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator. My name is Fancy Gender Lake. I'm an advocate and a tax consultant. This week, we are hosting students from different universities. It's different from the previous weeks where we have one single university on the talk show. So for today, it's a mixture of cream de la cream, the best. So we have a very powerful panel today. We are going to have a discussion on disability inclusion in higher institutions of learning. As you know, the issue of persons with disability, it is a global issue. It is something that has been highly discussed. Uganda has ratified several conventions around persons with disability. Now, notably, one is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, which was ratified by Uganda. And we have also seen several things that Uganda has put in place to ensure the implementation of this convention. Now, for our discussion for today, the most important article in that convention is Article 24. Article 24, which talks about it requires states to include persons with disability, and the requirement that persons with disability should not be discriminated against, and they should be treated on a basis of equal opportunities at all levels of education. So it's the most important article in there. We are talking about persons with disability in relation to the higher institutions of learning in Uganda. Now, something else that has also been noted, World Health Organization, in their statistics, they have stated that the biggest percentage of persons with disability in the world reside in developing countries. Now, Uganda being a developing country makes this topic one that is very pertinent and one that has to be discussed on this talk show. Now, another issue is that Uganda has also enacted a law and put it in place in Uganda. So we are going to look at the different provisions of the law, of that law, and see if its implementation is being ensured. And that is the Persons with Disabilities Act of 2020, which gives different definitions when it comes to persons with disability. It talks about the rights of persons with disability. It also specifically, I would like to draw your attention to Section 6 that talks about the rights of persons with disability to education. Now, we will break it down and look at several things that are prescribed in there and see if Uganda is implementing that law that has been put in place. Now, join me to welcome our panel of 2 ladies and 2 gentlemen to discuss the topic disability inclusion in higher institutions. Let me introduce the panelists. I'll start with the lady that is seated right next to me. She is familiar to the inter-university debate, having been in the previous season. Miss Osutaru Namirembe Gloria. She is a student at Kyambogo University and a former minister for persons with disability at Kyambogo University. Gloria, you're welcome to the inter-university debate.
Thank you.
Okay. Next to Gloria, we have Mr. Ngabirano Titus, who is a student at Busitema University. Titus, you're welcome to the inter-university debate.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next to Titus, we have Mr. Yiga Ronald, who is a student at Kyambogo University, and he is the current chairperson disciplinary committee for Kyambogo University Disability Association. You're welcome to the inter-university debate.
Thank you, moderator.
Okay, our 4th panelist is Miss Mirembe Ritah. Ritah is a student at Makere University Business School. Ritah, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I introduced earlier, our topic for today is disability inclusion in higher institutions of learning. And this topic, it's so fortunate that it's being discussed by a panel that comes from higher institutions, different higher institutions. So we can be able to properly discuss and share notes on what happens at the different levels. So I will start with you, Gloria. So Gloria, let's start from the beginning. Let's look at the scope of persons with disability, how a person with disability defined in this country.
Thank you so much, moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, basing on a hint that was given, the Persons with Disability Act 2020, I would use its definition that states disability is a substantial functional limitation of our daily life activities, which are also caused by physical or mental, all the barriers that we have within the community. And then when we come to understand what inclusion is simply engaging persons with disability in the normal daily activities that any other person does. So the whole term disability inclusion now draws us to including persons with disability in daily activities and engaging in different roles that any other person does, their peers. So this is something that is interesting that we are talking about today. I'll go ahead and give some of the types of disability we have. We have persons with visual impairment. When I talk about visual impairment, this is where we find people with low vision. For example, me, I have low vision. People use specs. Someone that can see that's short-sighted, or they have a problem with the left eye, or so I categorize under low vision. Then we have those that are totally blind. Those are the people that we see using braille, we see using the white cane. And then when we come to physical disability, we have our friends that use crutches, that we use wheelchairs, that we use sticks. And then we also have people with hearing impairment. And under hearing impairment, this is where we find friends that have low hearing ability. This is someone that you have to speak too loudly so that they can get to understand what you're saying. And we also have those that are totally deaf. So with them, we have to use sign language, or you have to improvise, write down, because at least they also understand, they can read. And then we also have people in the group of albinism. However, they're also grouped under people with visual impairment. But this is something important. You know, they're also a group of people that should be separate, because they also have different challenges. Besides also having issues with their visual, because they're affected by the sun, and that's why they're always encouraged to use caps. This is a way of protecting them from being overheat. And then we also have people with cerebral palsy. We have multiple disabilities. You find a friend with deaf blindness. So these are two things at the same time. We have people that are having dyslexia. When I talk about dyslexia, this is someone that has a challenge with writing. So they really need extra time, they need attention, so that they can be able to perform like any other person, just like I defined. We have dwarfism. I think this is something that might not be talked about so much here in Uganda, but they are also part of us. People with epilepsy. We also have people that have leprosy, people that also have spina bifida. These are all forms of disability that we have. Not forgetting also mental impairment, and also have people with intellectual challenges. They are all people that fall under the disability fraternity. However, in disability inclusion, there are several. It depends on the group of students and the disabilities that they have. However, we there is provision for all these disabilities, and some of these things, just like you said earlier on, steps that have been taken in ratifying the UN Convention Rights on Persons with Disability, which is an international law. We've seen some of these things broken down in the Constitution of Uganda in Article 35. We have seen how persons with disability are also, they also deserve respect, they also deserve human dignity just like any other person. And we've also seen that from that level, from the national, breaking it down to now higher institutions, we also have the university disability policies. So this shows, it gives an insight that they are having a leaf from some of the things that are being done internationally, nationally, to be able to have all students included in the university. But then something small to add, Madam Moderator. I'll give an example of University Kyambogo. Um, we have students, yes, but at times it's like we forget that we have the staff, and we also have staff that have disability. So this is something that that at times beats my understanding. Besides having a policy for only the students, it should cut across, because they are just like us. They need to have an adjusted environment to perform just like us, to be able to deliver to us, so that we can be the best of what we expected to be at the university. So simply, those are a few things I can break down, and disability, inclusion, what it is, and yeah, basically a few of the things are those.
Thank you so much, Gloria. That was an in-depth understanding of what we mean when we talk about persons with disabilities. And I guess our viewers were able to also learn. You know, sometimes you look at some of these terms and you think they are narrow, they're actually broad, especially when it comes to the issue of persons with disability. So let me move to Titus on something that Gloria touched a little bit on, the policy and legal protection. So in Uganda, what are some of the policy and legal protections that the government has come up with for persons with disability?
Yes, thank you very much, Gender, and good afternoon to us all. In Uganda, we first and foremost we subsidize to the UN Convention of Disabilities, which gives us the right to make sure that we accommodate the disabled students in our society that you hinted on earlier on. But also, us as Uganda, we also enacted anti-discrimination laws. When you say anti-discrimination, it doesn't only mean gender discrimination or things like that. We also have to consider disabled-based discrimination. So we also subscribe to such laws. Also, as Uganda, we have the 2003 National Council for Disabilities Act, which gives us the rights that also the disabled have the right to the laws of the Constitution. It doesn't give them special privileges, but then it gives them things that have to be able to help them in their day-to-day work. Also in Uganda, we have the 2006 and also the 2020 Disabilities Persons Act that have been passed by Parliament over time. But even then, when you break it down furthermore, also public institutions in their respective categories have to abide by these laws, but also have laws that have to, most cases, as you stated, favor only the students and not their work staff, where we find that students have to be given priority in case of their disability. But also private institutions conform to national laws, but then in most scenarios take a blind eye on most of students when it comes to their disabilities at the end of the day. So when you talk about these laws, the 2006 or 2003, yes, they're on paper, but then over time, as we shall also talk about implementation of most of these things, they are not necessarily implemented to the benefit of disabled students, and also entirely in the context, because most public universities have a policy that you should have a disability minister, or should have a representative of the disabled in your GRC and things like that. But then, having been a minister of justice at Busitema, you realize that even when you're having these discussions with students, even when you're having appointments, people will be like, that is a mini appointment. Like, they don't render someone the minister for disability valuable enough to be in student structures. You get, so they don't give that person the adequate respect and have to give them the adequate knowledge to perform their duties and be able to present students at the end of the day. But also, as we cry out for the disabled to be able to be given adequate representation, we should not fall back from the aspect of how things used to be. Instead of making things better, where we have to accommodate the students in the laws that are bettered every day from 2006. The 2020 law makes it more inclusive, giving these people, adding the aspect of albinism, adding the aspect of other categories that tend to be left out. We hope that as time moves on, we embrace what was then and be able to accommodate what can be able to be used in the near future, and try to bridge the loopholes and make disability offices, be it in public institutions or in public offices, more accommodating. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Titus, for looking at the broader legal and policy protections that exist in Uganda for persons with disability. Let me bring Ronald into the discussion. So, Ronald, let's get back now to institutions of higher learning. Now, so my question to you is, what are some of the protections put in place? Can be policy protections. What are some of those protections that the universities have for persons with disability?
Thank you, moderator. First and foremost, I'm going to first thank Dr. Paul Emong, the disability coordinator at Kyambogo University. In 2014, he realized that most of the institutions had no policies that protect the person with disabilities. However, years back from 2002, 2003, 2004, we had laws, but they were not put into practice. So Mr. Mong realized that yes, we have the laws and policies that protect students with disabilities in Uganda, but it is not practiced. So he came up with a voice, and most of the universities or higher institutions in Uganda have the policies which were amended by Dr. Mong in 2014. So I thank him for that. The next one is where I come from, Kyambogo University. Most of the buildings have been modified, like to the extent, if this side we have ladders, here we have the ladders, the landscapes, where those persons with disabilities, for example, those using the wheelchairs, are able to move on. When it goes to the buildings, I had our VC had a request to the government that it promote lifts, but it's not yet into practice, but it's soon going to be implemented. Another thing, speaking to my university, we are protected in, like me as I use clutches, we have those motorcycles that help us to move from one place to another. For instance, when I'm going to the lectures, I call the border guy. He comes, picks me, he takes me to the lecture room. When the lecture is done, I call him back. He picks me, he takes me back to where I reside. Thirdly,
Is the cost met by the university, or it's a personal cost?
No, the cost is made for the university.
So the university covers that.
Yeah, the university covers the costs, and it's responsible for that motorbike plus paying the cost of that driver.
Oh, okay.
Another thing, the university, Kyambogo University, we have our association, which is called Kyambogo University. Kyambogo University, it's called, I've forgotten the full name, but we normally...
I think Gloria knows the full name, right?
Yeah. The association is called Kyambogo University Students Disability Association.
That's the name. Like, I have it in mind in short form as CHUDISA. CHUDISA, we have a policy.
And you're the chairperson of its disciplinary committee?
Yeah, I'm the chairperson.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, let me go back to how we came up with the disciplinary committee. You know, persons with disabilities, we are white elephants. What am I meaning? Once I do something bad, it is going to be seen by everyone in the university. The other man did this one. The other man did this thing. So our coordinator, Mr. Mong, found out that most of the students at Kyambogo University are indisciplined. They are indisciplined. I'm not lying, and I'm sorry to say this, but they are indisciplined. Because I normally interact with most of them, but they are vulgar in speaking. They take that initiative that I'm disabled, I don't care. I answer anyhow. So it was in the verge, the university wanted to explore some of the students with disabilities. That's how Dr. Mong saw it. No, before exploring them, we first build up the committee so as we can prepare our fellows, and you tell them how we should behave. However much we are disabled, we are also people like others. We shouldn't be indisciplined because we are disabled. When I thought back to the protection procedures, Kyambogo University tries to cater for every student with disabilities in a way that they give us some allowance at every end of a semester. Why are they doing this? They don't want us to be left behind. You can imagine like a person, you're not disabled, but you're able, you have everything that you need. You find a person with disability does not have. You understand? So in that situation, most of them become frustrated. So the university decided they provide us with some colorways. However much is not big, but I think it is enough. To me, it is enough. It is enough, and I use it to provide myself with the basic needs that I need. Yeah, that's it, Madam Moderator.
Okay, thank you. Gloria, you have something to
I
add?
would love to add something.
Okay.
You asked about the policies that protect students in higher institutions of learning, and I would love to my fellow panelists to agree with me that all our universities at least have policies that have been set to enhance our learning, to enhance our stay, to enhance our participation, to enhance different things that a student is expected of at the university. And just like my fellow panelist Ronald had said, we have the Kyambogo policy, and which provides reasonable accommodation. So when I talk about reasonable accommodation, this is something big that he has cut a few of these things in terms of the allowances, in terms of the tricycles that help to transport our friends that have physical disability, and maybe something little to reckon was apart from disability, apart from physical disability, there are also those people that have muscular dystrophy. This is someone that moves by supporting themselves on their knees. So someone would put them under physical because they cannot move alone. But these tricycles are being helpful to them. And just like he said, it is the university that caters for all these costs. We have extra time, and this is something interesting I got to realize when I joined the university. For the time being in my life, I've been studying in schools that are not disability inclusive. So I'll take myself as any other student. But then reaching the university, I'm finding all these things. At first, I used to deny. I thought, yeah, I can do it. But with time, because of the policy that gives us extra time, I think it's one of the attributes as to why I've been performing well, because you're given an extra 45 minutes to write your exam and complete it without disturbances. And we have a special room where we are always prepared to sit, our resource room. And then we also have things to do with the timetable. This comes to now the lectures, just like you said, the structure. Some of the old structures don't have the ramps, don't have those accessible points for the students. So on the timetables, would opt for lower classes on the ground level for the student to be able to access the lecture. And also during exams, it's still the same. And because of this issue, there has always been interactions between Dr. Imong, who is our disability coordinator, and all other persons in the disability support center. That is one of the offices, the biggest safe space we have as Kyambogo, that is supporting us in implementing the disability policies. And now something to thank the government through the universities. I believe it's the same in other universities as well. Is there's been a realization of giving students allowances to support us in terms of our academic materials basing on our disability. So, for instance, me, I would some of the needs I have acquired because of these allowances are the light sensors. My eyes are sensitive to light, and then we also get money to photocopy notes. I'm having large print because some colleagues might not be able to read the small print. And for the friends that are hard of hearing, they've been given interpreters. On government, everything is covered. But then the other bit that I got to acknowledge, that is even the private students who were taken in. So there is a sharing of costs, but it is doing something great that a student who is on private is also able to compete with the other students based on these things that are being provided. So I hope and pray it's the same thing to the other universities, that also the private students are included, um, besides having only the government students on these things. And it is a very big attribute that I know all the public universities are doing, and it's really helping a lot of things.
Okay, thank you so much, Gloria and Ronald. Ronald, you have something to add?
Yeah, I wanted.
Okay, briefly, so that we bring Ritah into the discussion.
Okay, it's fine. Okay, I wanted to clarify on the issue of extra time. Minister Gloria, for the 2 years I've been at Kyambogo University, I've come to realize that the extra time papers are useless. They are useless. One time I was in an exam, then like was that lady physical? Yeah, he has a physical disability. So he claimed that he had the extra time paper. The madam was like, no, me, I'm tired. I have my children. Yes, you're disabled, but so what? Me too, I also had my extra time paper, but I didn't submit it. You understand? For the time being, I've been at Kyambogo University. They are useless. Madam Gloria, take that
So
from
your
me.
issue is, it is there in the policy.
It is there in the policy, but it's
there are
not
certain
practiced.
persons that are not implementing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a certain, but partial, like fully, it is
it's not being implemented.
It is not implemented. Imagine those blinds. How can I explain it? They have to first transfer those letters to Braille, then after they do their exam, but they are not added any time.
Okay.
That's it, man.
Okay, let's bring Ritah into the discussion. So, Ritah, I would like you to also look at this discussion from that angle. What are some of the other protections that are being provided?
The first statement I'll bring on board is what we are looking at right now is social oppression, not impairment hiccups. Because when you look at the policies, right from the UN Human Rights Commission, flowing down, we have the Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable Development Goal 4 talks about equitable education, provision of equitable education for all. And we still center down to the Convention of Rights of People with Disability, actually Article 24, that describes to us intentional and non-intentional discrimination. Now, what I feel we should actually look at right now is the non-intentional discrimination, because if we focus on the intentional bit, actually policies have been put in place that do govern the disabled people. We're going to look at the fact that government institutions have come in with policies that can actually protect, like the two we're describing. They talked about how Kyambogo has you talked about a club.
Yeah, an
That-
association.
yes, an association that governs them. That in itself clearly shows that there's some policy structure, there's something governing them, there's something that's protecting them. But the problem with it is the social bit in it. How have the people been able to actually understand and internalize these policies? Have they been able to understand the importance of the policies? That's basically what I would bring on table at this point, reaching the view of this discussion. Have they actually been shown the importance of these policies and why these policies have been put in place. Because all these structures are there. The government will say, actually, National Council for Higher Education will say that there is a policy that is going to govern disabled people. This is how they will be treated. Infrastructures will be changed to put it in the suitability for them. Actually, they have. That's the fact. Because even at MOOBs, we do have the structures he described. Yes, they are there.
The RAMs.
They are there. But the thing is, the social bit of it, the teachers themselves have within these teaching colleges have the fact that they're going to have a class of people who are impaired. Have they been shown that? Have they been actually, has it been clearly implemented into their minds to understand that? Are there laws that are regulating them? Those are the things we now need to look at. He brought in the aspect of the extra time paper, the excuse that she brought in. Actually, there should be a certain kind of penalty that for such a teacher or lecturer would bring something of that sort to a student who has an impairment. Okay, those are the things that I think we should center around, because these policies are there. Beautiful policies have been put in place to govern them. But how have these policies reached out to everyone? And how have those people who are governing those policies reached out to the common man? Because actually, when you look at the provisions that they put in place for impaired people, they are a bigger advantage to us, the so-called non-impaired people. Yes, because if a teacher is going to explain something further, because maybe she has a listening disability, I'm going to also understand more. Now, these are the things that you need to bring on board for the people who might not understand the importance of these policies. It's to make them understand that actually what the advantage they are bringing to them is of a bigger benefit to you. Those are the things that we should focus on basically in this discussion.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh,
Thanks.
Catholic,
Yes,
something very
yes,
small.
Titus.
Something very small. Yes. They all talked about a bit of allowances, and me personally, I have an issue with that because of just two reasons. She talked about unintentional discrimination, but for me, when a government student is being rewarded with the allowances of probably he came on the disability scheme and is getting the disability allowance on top of his government allowances, that is very okay. My concern comes in the context of private students. Why? Unless you're providing equipment for them, probably hearing aids, probably reading assistances and the rest, but by you providing financial assistance to a disabled person, irrespective, you're creating a bias. You get, you're already going to create a bias between one, the students, then two, even administration themselves. They'll begin questioning things like, is it really necessary for us to provide financial assistance? Why don't we then use that money to provide physical assistance, probably rails, probably wheelchairs, probably all those things. My concern comes in when you're providing financial assistance, which is not descriptive on what it's going to be used for. Use that money to probably make the large prints. That is very beautiful. But you providing allowances in context to these people. Private students, government students have their liberty because they've come on a disability scheme. You're entitled to that. You worked hard, you read, it is okay. But private students can be aided, can be helped with equipments, but giving money, not welcome.
Okay, thank you, Titus. Let me get back to Gloria. Okay, so Gloria, we have talked about Uganda having international obligations, national obligations, having policies in place. Now let's talk about implementation.
Yes.
I think that discussion started from Ritah on the issue of the implementation. So to what extent is Uganda as a country living up to international standards when it comes to treatment of persons with disability?
Thank you, moderator. That's really something interesting that you've asked. I would say apparently it's to a larger extent because we have seen different organizations that have come up. We have NUDIPU, which is one of the biggest organization that is fighting for the rights of persons with disability, and through this they are creating awareness We also have Light for the World. It's also one of the organizations I've seen we've interacted with at the university that is fighting to see that there is inclusion in the employment sector, and actually they always take a step to follow up the students that are done with the university and fill them up in positions that come their way. Um, we also have Tunaweza Foundation. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's also an organization that is fighting to see that some of these things are implemented. For instance, when it comes to internships, I have an instance of a friend from Makere Business University. She was supposed to go
Makere
for
University Business School.
yes, she was supposed to go for internship, but she was denied just because she had a disability. So these organizations come in to help us, the students with special abilities, to see that you're incorporated, and we also find space like any other person. And I would like to take us a little back, basing on what was mentioned in regards to non-intentional policies. Yeah, there are really several issues. We have had, I think it was last year, we have had the Disability Support Center go to all faculties having engagements. But just like you said, it is the perception of a person that at times brings back some of these intentional acts that someone is boldly telling you this does not concern me, but they're always called upon, please come and attend these engagements. It is these are broken down so that we can create awareness on them, understanding the policies we have and how best you're going to help the student. And then when it comes to issues to do with financial allowances, I would love to clear up the air. This allowance actually, it is the money that we use for the equipment. It is not like the government students. You're going to use it for living out. You have to give accountability. What have you used it for?
Okay, so Titus' discussion, if I got him right, is that instead of giving financial assistance,
yes.
the university should put these facilities in place. Am I
Exactly.
quoting you right?
Yes.
So what is your reaction to that versus the university putting in the facilities versus giving finances to the individuals to purchase the facilities?
Yeah, I would say
The
that is
equipment.
that is a very great idea that would actually
Which one?
of the university actually using the money that they give to the students to use to access to actually buy these equipments. It would be easy because it would be something generational. I would know as this year goes out, we still have other students coming in from from the from A level that are joining us with maybe different disabilities, and at least they're going to find these equipments and are able to use them. So it's also, it has also given me a challenge that I get to realize when we are given this assistance, most of the times it is you're going to be with it. It's not going to stay back. So based on what he says, I would agree with that because it's going to stay and other people are going to use it. And maybe what they would be doing is just to see if it is in a good state to carry on to help other students, which in a sense we have, but it's not for all disabilities. We have a visual tech resource room that has the machine that prints out braille. We have the vector reader and all those things, but it's only for the visual. So that is also a tech that all other disabilities could be incorporated and also given attention to. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Let me move to Titus. So Titus, we are still talking about implementation. And my question to you is all these policies being put in place and the laws being put in place, to what extent are the different institutions of higher learning implementing these policies and laws?
Implementation of most laws is more of a curve, yeah, we find that in a space of 5 to 10 years, it is really being implemented. We'll take an example of Kyambogo. You are mentioning Professor who?
Dr. Mongpo.
Exactly, Dr. Mongpo. The question is, when Dr. Mongpo leaves Kyambogo, what is next? Yes, because we get to realize that in most cases, for something to be efficient, it has to have someone passionate about it. But in the case of Kyambogo, Dr. Mongpo is there and wants the disabled to be considered. An example of Makere moves and all those things, we end, even in Busitema, we end on the construction of ramps. We do not take into consideration other people who are probably mentally impaired. We do not take into consideration other people who could be visually impaired and all those other scenarios. In most cases, after a building is built and there are ramps or elevators and things like that, most people think that is done. You find that even visually impaired people have to be put into consideration while doing construction of these buildings. There has to be a way when they're incorporated, and architects around the world know it, but they don't put it into consideration. Moving to the implementation of our laws, we get to realize that when you're implementing laws, they say that the disabled have to be considered in offices of responsibility. But as I stated earlier, are these people in the offices of responsibility given sufficient power enough for them to execute their roles? Are they given sufficient even financial backing for them to execute their roles? Because you'll say we have to have a disability convention whereby we are going to discuss issues affecting us as a disabled. Is it really sufficient enough? Because an example of Busitema, last year we had the disabled students wanting to make an association so that their voices could be heard. You'll find that you'll talk to the VC, yes, he'll give you an ear and say what you're saying is right. He's very listening, but then it may skip his mind. Then deep down on the structures where the VC is not, where the dean of students has to be, where the warden has to be, are they really fulfilling their roles? Because I've talked of Dr. Mongpo, very inspirational man in his field, but then transitioning of most of these individuals who are going to put into consideration most of these laws, it leads us behind. Makere, for example, in the disability policy of students, where this provide a caretaker for some of the students, over time you get to realize that some of those things are phased out. But my biggest concern is we are living in a highly innovative world. Why do we still stick on things that I think are probably ancient? Can't we find ways of incorporating in things that could be beneficial to the disabled? Could you probably, if let me say I have a brother who can't move, who has probably who is having a broken leg or something, can we have a prosthetic leg given to that child so that he can be able to feel without having to have the burden of clutches moving around society and all those things? So the laws are there. We have the laws of discrimination, but she talked about the aspect of the social concept. You are not going to force some things down a human being. People have to learn. People have to be sensitized. People have to be made to understand what is wrong and what is right. People have to be made to understand that this person has an eye issue, this person is blind, but then is also a human being like me and has to be accommodated in society. So irrespective of laws, social construct is a very key aspect in society that has to be put into consideration to be able to accommodate all the disabled students in Uganda. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, Ritah.
I think he's bringing in something about innovation. It is okay, but okay, one thing we forget is that statistically, and okay, when we look at statistics and the finances of the country, according to the actually framework of 2016-2017 financial year, the budget dropped. You remember, right now we are focusing on education. We're looking at inclusivity of the disabled, but the inclusivity of education, the budgeting of education dropped from 22.97 to 11.98. That's a very big drop. So some things actually at this point can't be properly facilitated. If we are talking about financing the tools that they need, it will take a long time for us right now because the financial status of the country is bad.
So in your opinion, what do you think we should do
at this point?
Okay, I think that's a question that Ritah is going to answer after the break. So let's take a short break and then get back with that discussion. Thank you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that short break. We are still with students from different universities and we are discussing inclusion of persons with disability in institutions of higher learning in Uganda. So before we took that short break, we had a discussion between Titus and Ritah, and Titus had posed the question to Ritah. So Ritah, I think you can respond now.
Okay. So Titus was asking about where should the money come from, but he also brought more ideas to my mind. He brought in an aspect of extension of the hiccups that actually impaired people face to other budgets, stretching them out to other budgets of the financial year. And it's actually a good idea that you brought on board, because when we look at the facilities that we have for those people, they are limited. But with the innovations, okay, with the bigger minds that are actually developing day by day, we can actually come up with better ways of accommodating them, of making them feel more comfortable within the institutions, within higher places of learning, basically, because this is where they interact with different types of people. Yeah. He brought in something.
Okay, thank you.
He opened my mind.
Okay, so let me get back to Gloria. So Gloria, let's talk about inclusion. This is something that is under the Persons with Disabilities Act of 2020. If I can just pick that section, it is section 6, subsection 4, which says, an institution of learning that enrolls a learner with a disability shall provide an inclusive education system for the learner. Now, when you go into the definition of inclusive education, and still under the Act, it talks about inclusive education system means a system where a learner with a disability is taught together with the other learners in the same environment, and where, if required, extra support is given to the learner with disability. So my question is, to what extent are our institutions of higher learning living up to this provision of inclusive education?
Thank you so much, Gender. Yeah, just like we had the first round that had heated arguments about this, it's quite challenging, I would say, up to now in the university. Just like I said earlier on, when it comes to that bit of providing an inclusive environment with the other people, yes, I would say, I think to me it's because I've been studying within that environment that is disability sensitive. I think you've heard of this of UNICE. That's the ancient maybe name, but currently Faculty of Special Needs and Rehabilitation. That was my faculty, and I think I was speaking that at an angle that I was within this place where all these things are provided, while my friend Yiga, where he was, these are things that we're not given attention to. So it is still, I would say, we are still on a lesser extent. We still have a way to go breaking down perceptions of our lecturers, the students themselves, and also it coming to people that think actually from where I study that it's only persons with disability that live there. So they would always refer to everyone that comes that side as someone that is disabled. But then I think it still goes back to making everyone within these higher institutions of learning understand what these policies actually mean, what they should actually roll out to ensure that the students are able to compete like any other person. But for instance, some of the insights I would give, yeah, we've been studying with other friends in the same lecture room, but the lecturer was sensitive of so and so has this disability.
Yeah. Is there a provision of the part for the extra help that is needed?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to bring in. That my colleague has multiple disabilities, deaf blindness, but then he would sit at the front, and the lecturer would know. So basically, that is easier within the faculty, like I said, but outside, then it's still a challenge. So I would still say, it's still on a lesser extent.
Okay.
Still have to do something.
Thank you so much. Let me move to Titus. Still the same. So, to what extent are the institutions of higher learning promoting this provision of inclusive education for persons with disability?
Okay, thank you very much. First and foremost, the beauty about this conversation is that it is higher learning. By it being higher learning, it comes with two phases. One, we are dealing with adults, and then two, we are dealing with a stage in life where people are trying to shape their futures. What does that mean? That even in the context of the higher learning institution, either being too supportive or not too supportive, is that one, you as an individual, are you doing enough as a person to look out for what you really need? Because yes, even in the context that the university has provided, one, the walkways, two, there is that extra time given for these people during an examination period of 45 minutes and all those things. You as an individual who's having this impairment, whether visual, mental, or physical, are you really tapping into those resources? Because there are two possibilities. There being no resource to cater for your disability, and then two, resources being there are not utilizing them. Because we have scenarios where students have these things in place, but then literally want to be spoon-fed. We have the saying that disability is not inability, and it's not an excuse for you to have this intercontinuous mindset. You have given an example of having someone who's deaf-blind, which is very heartbreaking that someone is in a situation. Such a person shouldn't be in the same classroom with someone who can see very well and hear very well. Such a person should be given an extra form of treatment. Such a person should be given either special teachers, because you cannot expect that person or individual to understand. One, they are not literally listening to what the lecturer is saying, and then two, they are not seeing what the lecturer is actually visualizing, or possibly that mindset at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, one, the sessions of learning are giving the bare minimum in most scenarios, but by the bare minimum, I say they're doing basics. Basics is construct a building, give us ramps, have this in place, do this. As I stated, Kyambogo is gifted because of the doctor they have there, who's really fighting tooth and nail to have these scenarios there. If you go to the universities, public or private, these things are not there. But my concern in most cases is, yes, these things are not there, but you as an individual, look out for what you want. If the university provides something, you can top on, if not necessarily financial probably, but then you can top, you could probably do extra reading hours for yourself to be able to catch up with the rest of the individuals. If, let me say, that the university provides for the blind those books, they are called Braille, yes. Are you as an individual utilizing it? Because universities have those things in place. The funny bit is that it is only in traditional schools that were built in the 1900s, that have these facilities in place. If you go to private institutions from secondary level upwards, formed in the recent generations, those things are not catered for. So these institutions, irrespective of public or private, have to incorporate in these facilities. But then also, two, individuals with these disabilities should not use disability as an inability, but probably use those facilities, like extra 45 minutes, as an advantage to make themselves better in society.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me move to Ronald. So we are on the topic of inclusion, you know. So my question is going to be very, very specific, since you are also in a position of responsibility in the association. So from the angle of their discussion on inclusion, we are also looking at putting in that extra, the extra help that are needed for persons with disability. For example, the law provides that if you have, even if one student who has a visual impairment, there must be somebody in place. You have a blind student, you must be able to put somebody in place who is able to cater for that. If you have, for example, a student who is deaf, even if one student like this in an institution, you should be able to provide a lecturer who can be able to handle such special needs. So are those happening in institutions of higher learning? Are the persons with disability being properly included?
Thank you, moderator. I want to throw back your minds. In Uganda currently, persons with disabilities, they are 24 million. 24 million, of which 16.5, they are adults. We are dealing with the adults. And put it back into your mind that most of the universities...
24 million, meaning
That's more than
all...
more than 50% of the general population.
Like, how many are they? Maybe
We are
I've made a
45
mistake.
million Ugandans.
Yeah. There are how many persons with
Okay, you
disabilities?
can proceed with that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make some research on that. But currently, that's what I made. That there are 24 million. Most of the universities in Uganda, okay, like they are run by how are your cash flows? Most especially the public universities, they get their funds from the government. You know, the things of government, approvals, the budget has decreased, has increased. Imagine like at Kyambogo University, my colleague here said that providing requirements so that people can access them, you find that we are many. We are many. There is no fund. How are you going to finance those things? You find that the university has no money. It cannot buy all the requirements. But to a later stage, after the semester is done, the government sends the money. The semester is done. How am I going to benefit when the semester is done? You get that incidence? You said that the university should provide the requirements and the people are able to access them. But currently in your semester, the university has no money. When you reach out to the administration, they say you haven't received the money from the government. After the semester is done, or at the end of the semester, the university gets the money. So how beneficial is it? You understand, madam? So to a greater extent, there is nothing done.
So to a greater extent, there is no inclusion.
There is no inclusion to a greater extent. You say, madam, you talked of, like, if you have a visual impaired person, it's the university to finance for that lecturer to cater for all the stuff. But how is the university going to cater for that lecturer when it doesn't have finance? Do you see how the perception is growing to the lecturer? And you say that you have the extra time paper. Do you know what it means for a lecturer to stay down for 45 minutes? That is calling up for an allowance, of which the university doesn't have it. You get my point? The university doesn't have that allowance. So, that's what, madam, I have.
Okay, thank you so much. I see Gloria has something to add.
Something so small. I would love to disagree with my colleague when it comes to there not being a benefit when money comes in. Just like Titus says, you as an individual, what are you doing? What are you doing to utilize the little that is there? Actually, those resources, students are expected to use it for the whole year. So if you're someone that is reckless, then definitely the blame comes to you, meaning you're not benefiting, not because you didn't get, but because you are not handling well the resources. So it still comes back to me, someone with a special need. How am I utilizing what is there, and how am I improvising for what's not there, and breaking down still our perceptions on these matters when it comes to disability inclusion.
Okay, thank you. So
Okay,
you have
I
something
wanted
to add,
to add on
Ronald?
something.
Yes.
Honorable Minister, like, I didn't say that, yes, I've said that to a greater extent, the government has done nothing. I'm not saying that we as persons with disabilities, we have also done nothing. Let me give you an example. Last semester, my clutches broke down. Remember, they helped me in locomotion to go to the lecture rooms. I called Dr. Poemong. Do you know the reply? Currently, we have no money. Does it
So
mean that I didn't utilize these clutches?
But
your issue is the funding.
Yeah, my issue is the funding. It's the funding that caused all the problem that
Let's make a
the person
conclusion.
with disabilities, like, they are left behind.
Due to funding.
Yeah.
Okay. Titus, conclude on this issue and we move to Ritah.
yes, just in conclusion, I feel there's something that we have to understand. If you know the system is going to delay to release money, plan. It's just basic. Plan for it. Then two, there are scenarios, as I've said, you as an individual, you shouldn't always look to what you have to be provided for.
But Titus,
Plan.
how best do you plan for things to do with clutches breaking down?
Now, what I'm trying to say is this. I have been in the government system. As a leader, I know how hectic it is to get resources. You have been also in that government system. You know how hectic it is. In the scenario that your clutches are broken down, you as an individual, you know that you're in that scenario. It is not a must that all the time that something happens, there's always be money to dispose of, because it will not be there. Even though in the private world or public world, it's not always there. You should have you as an individual, money for miscellaneous, money for emergencies and things like that. So that when the money comes from the government, you can compensate yourself for things like that. So me as an individual, plan for inevitabilities. If you know that you're in a scenario of disabled or it, which I do not like calling disabled for disabled, because it's not right. It's like an insult to them. So if in that scenario, plan. If you know that the money is going to come late, plan certain that money comes. You are in a state to cater for what has happened, not to have this. Because the moment you make the person also get tired of being in that scenario of helping, you get my point. So proper planning leads to us having the continuous cycle of government hasn't done this, the money has the day to come, when the money comes, things, you get my point. So proper planning helps us from some of very many inevitabilities.
Okay, thank you. So Ritah, let's get out of the university setup and get into the community. Now we are done with the university, we are out here in the community. So to what extent has Titus wouldn't want us to say government. To what policies or what is out there being put in place to ensure that persons with disability are included after education, probably in the job market? Yeah.
First of all, disability remains not an inability. When they're entering the job world, they're going to go through the same panel, they're going to go through the same process, and if it means a promotion, they are viable to the same promotion standards as a person who is not impaired. Yes, so basically in the job world, actually these people have policies guiding them. Organizations do have stringent policies that guide that disabled people are supposed to be treated in this way. There's occupational health and safety, where actually if it's a flat, there should be an elevator to help them get to different levels faster, toilets themselves. So basically in the employment field, it is we are still looking at social cultural effects, the mindsets of the people and their perception towards them, it is still the only problem. But inclusivity in the job world for impaired people is there very much. I would still want to go back. There's something, there are very many things they've been discussing, but there are three things I want to look at. The hiccups of inclusivity, limited in-service training. I feel it's a very big problem. These are things I was noting down when they were talking. Student-teacher understanding of those impaired people is still a problem. I'm looking at the base, the foundation of everything. If teachers are not taught, because these teachers are also taught before they come to teach, if they are not taught to understand how to deal with these people, they are going to keep treating them the same way. Back to I'm going to leave the higher education and go back to the lower education, because it's what is going to mold a human being to become what they are. Basically, if at all there is more training for the teachers from the lower side to understand how to deal with these children as they grow. Basically, someone will grow up with a mindset knowing that actually I'm not impaired, I'm just like all my friends, I'm special. I just do things in a different way. Now, these are the things that you need to, those are just the hiccups that we have. Limited in-service training, limited data. People are focusing only on visual and physically impaired people, but there are very many types of disabilities. Now, those are the things that people are meant to understand that they do not know. I also didn't know until I kept growing and reading that I actually understood there are different types of impairments. Now, if more information is out there to understand that actually, if we've brought in this number of children, these students are actually impaired. But don't make them feel impaired. Let them understand that they're just different from the rest. When we get to higher institutions of learning, you did not know you were impaired. You just realized that actually I am. But it did not bring a higher impact to your mindset, because before you felt you were like the rest, you were normal, you get it. Now, those are the things that they should put into their minds to understand that I am not demeaned, I am not nothing, I am something and I can do a lot. Those are the things you need to understand. That is why you'll find that in workplaces, those people, now this is actually a live example. I'll not mention the organization, but the people that I have met that are impaired are actually the most highly performing employees in most organizations. That is what makes them very special. I've wrapped it all up. You know, you have a little time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ritah. I have one question that I would like Titus and Gloria to respond to at different times. I'll start with Gloria. One question. Now, what is your perspective on persons with disability being given more opportunities when it comes to employment? By that, I mean entry into employment, and also when it comes to promotion. What is your perspective on that? Anyone can start.
Shoot.
Gloria, would you like to start?
Let Titus go first.
Okay, being given more opportunities.
Yeah.
There are two things that for me are, one, not right. Speaking as from the engineering perspective, the things that we don't expect to see in production for the safety and health hazards that come with it. Yes, it is very heartbreaking when I see someone who's probably having she mentioned some disabilities, who's moving with his hands to be in production. Production is a very hectic field, and I would prefer them being in quality assurance. Now, that comes at a price. It comes at a price at someone who has probably learned the art so well and has given it more time to be able to be missing out on such opportunities for this person to be catered for, just because there's a policy that says that a company has to cater for that category of people.
So Titus, when you're done being technical, you'll answer that question straight up. Opportunities in generally.
I was just giving an example so that people get to realize that when you talk about opportunities, I do not want this entire mindset of we are having gender equality, we are having we are giving the disabled the opportunities and the rest. Give someone the job based on merit. give the person, as you stated it very clearly, if you have worked hard, you can get the promotion. If you haven't, why should you be promoted on the concept of a certain law put in place to favor your category?
So your perspective is that promotion should be based on merit.
Even
Recruitment, all opportunities should be based on merit.
merit.
Gloria, what's your perspective on that?
I would like to differ a little, because this is basing on the organizations I've seen also trying to see that there is inclusion of persons with special ability in the employment world. I would, yeah, like you're saying, it should remain the same, but at some point, if there are organizations that still provide the opportunity, that there should be maybe an added help for these people to join, it is fine. But all I know is most of the times what an employer is looking for is what's your experience, what are your qualifications, are you able, just like the whole discussion, are you able to compete in the same space with any other person? So it is, to me, it should be a two-way thing.
There should no. For first, wait. Let me see if I get you. You think they should consider both?
How?
Okay.
Should promotion, because the question is straight up, opportunities being given at workplaces,
Yes.
can be promotion, recruitment, opportunities generally at workplaces. Do you think it should be on merit, or should there be more opportunities given to persons with disabilities?
Okay, now that's a little tricky to me, but basing on okay, I've been trying to apply jobs. There are actually organizations that will give more opportunities. They would say if you're someone with maybe a disability, it would be of an advantage. So I feel that is maybe giving them more opportunities for them to come in. That's why I was saying there are organizations that have that space, and there are those that maybe don't have those informations. It's okay. Go on with the qualifications, the experience, and performance to get to the other level that others are also getting to.
Okay. Titus started by being technical, he later answered the question. Gloria was technical throughout. Okay, let me give. Yes, so I think I should bring on board Ronald and Ritah so that we also get their perspective on that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. To me,
without being technical.
Yeah, without being technical. I want to agree with my colleague, Mr. Titus. It should be on merit.
Your reason?
On merit. Why? If I'm disabled and I'm able to do the productivity that you want, why don't you recruit me?
Okay, let me ask you, Ronald, one question. Do you think, okay, in your own perspective, in your own opinion, do you think somebody who, the person with disability can at this extent compete on a fair ground with someone without disabilities in the job world? It is the same question I've always asked about affirmative action. Do you think they can fairly compete in the job world? Someone who has all their eyes in place, can they fairly compete with someone who doesn't have eyes or something, someone who is blind?
Fairly, madam. The real truth is, fairly, they can't.
So what are you saying, Ronald?
But I'm saying like this. Most organizations recruit the disabled because of the 10% waiver
of taxes.
What am I meaning, madam? I'm not going to mention the name of that company. The 10% waiver, remember, it is not deducted, it is saved as a retained earning. They are 300 million. So they recruit people with disabilities. Over you're able, over you're unable, as long as you can be in line with their productivity, they recruit you. Why? To reach the maximum of the 10% people. If you recruit the 10%, we are going to give you a 10% waiver. So they almost every year they sell 300 million as they are 10% on their tax reductions.
So you're saying people do that basically to get a tax
Some of them.
percent, but
Some
in
of
actual
them.
sense, it is not because
Yeah.
they want to uplift persons with disabilities.
Yes.
Okay.
This is my
Rita,
opinion.
your perspective. You have actually run out of time.
This is my opinion. I believe that they actually can. Everyone is born for something. It doesn't mean that because probably I'm disabled and I cannot be in the engineering sector, doesn't mean that I can't sit in an office. Yes? So I believe that every impaired person can fit somewhere in the organization. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have to fit in a specific part, but there is a place for them somewhere, somehow there is a place for them
So
in
Rita,
the organization.
if
So they can't be put on fair
if an
ground.
organization is recruiting, let's say 5 social workers, so is it okay in your perspective if they say, out of the 5, we are giving 3 slots to persons with disabilities?
It's not okay. Why? We're going to look at productivity. You know, you're putting the company.
So
I know
Rita,
I'm hitting very many
Rita,
rocks.
how
but
about
we're
if
hitting
they say that
productivity.
when they look at Titus said they cannot work in production?
They cannot.
Is it okay to say in a different field in the organization, let us have 3 persons with disability?
Probably that would be okay, but if you're putting them in that position because they're disabled, yet they actually can't fit in it, then you are going to risk the productivity of the organization. But my belief is that there are fair grounds for them within the organization. There's a position for them. If probably he's not going to be within the field and moving around and struggling with the things everywhere, at least he can supervise, at least he can draw the statistics. You get it? So I believe they can fit somewhere within the organization, but you cannot risk the productivity of an organization and put them in a position that's not for them. So they actually can't compete on fair grounds.
Okay.
They can.
Thank you. So we have come to the end of our discussion. I'm going to give each panelist an opportunity to give us your closing remarks. And in your closing remark, please feature how best we can include persons with disability in our education system, especially higher learning. I'll start with Gloria.
Thank you, Gender, once again. I would still draw back to our perceptions, because it starts with me, then it goes to the people around me, family, community, and to the broader aspect of the society. How I perceive myself may lead to how people are going to relate with me. So if we break down the perception bit, it's going to be easier for someone to perceive you in a way that that is going to help you get included, participate in all your daily activities within the different sectors that you've mentioned, education and employment and all the other areas. So perception to me is key.
Okay, thank you. Titus.
Yes. Thank you all to my panelists for your time. But moving forward, as she has talked about social contract and the rest, but then I feel in every sphere we have to have more funding for these people. We get to acknowledge that they need more funding for them to be more inclusive. But even then, you as an individual, what do you believe in? What do you want to achieve at the end of the day? With a little provided, can you top up to make yourself the candle or the light for the other people, to be used as a yardstick for the other disabled individuals to look up to? So moving forward, we have to implement the already beautiful policies we have on paper, but above all, provide more funding through these spheres so that you can be able to achieve greater things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ronald.
To my side, madam, I think both the student and the government, everyone has to do his best. So as to achieve these goals, the rest can follow after you doing your part. Yeah.
Thank you. Rita.
Basically, teaching, learning processes, and institutional management. That is the root of most of the mindsets. That is the root of the growth of an individual as a whole. So restructuring those small things down there as a child is growing is what is actually going to help them as individuals. I liked what she brought on forth. She used herself as an example. So that is the only thing that is actually going to help them to remain empowered as they keep growing, as they keep developing to become responsible citizens.
Okay. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of our discussion for today. Thank you, Gloria, Titus, Ronald, and Ritah, for the beautiful discussion that we have had here. I'd like to say thank you to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for bringing together Inter-University Debate, which is a platform where university students discuss several issues that affect them. For this particular discussion, we had a very, very in-depth discussion on the inclusion of persons with disability in institutions of higher learning. From us, we'd like to say thank you to the viewers for watching. Please subscribe to this channel. Go to our social media platforms, tag CCG. Let us know what you think about the inclusion of persons with disability in the education sector, especially institutions of higher learning. Thank you so much. See you again next week, same time.